Welcome everyone to our Video Asset Management Symposium, a short but content-filled adventure through all sorts of learnings and best practices around managing video assets and the technology magic that makes it all possible. Thank you all for joining us from wherever in the world you are today, and thank you, of course, to our event sponsor, Extreme Reach, for supporting the event. And if you want to find out more about Extreme Reach, maybe chat to a member of their team or learn how they can support you in developing your creative asset management platform, click on the Meet Extreme Reach tab. You know, asset management for video used to be a highly specialized thing. You know, the purview of television broadcast engineers, the people who understood the very unusual file formats and who had the infrastructure that could handle what we then thought of as enormous files. But now video is ubiquitous. Maybe even more than that, it's a critical element of how just about every brand is engaging their audience. We all, as consumers, expect rich content experiences that draw us in. And the nature of the videos themselves has changed dramatically. If you think about it, in the past, an ad was 30 seconds long, and we all watched the same ads at the same time. Now, think about how broad a range of ad formats there is, especially online, where they can be as short as 10 or sometimes even just 5 seconds. And they're played at different times during a show or content, not just in the defined commercial block. Think also about how easy it's becoming to personalize the ad selection for an individual viewer. And then you add into that the feedback, the notion of measurement and feedback into the brand or advertising process. And that's another whole new world. It kind of changes what effectiveness means now. You know, what is effectiveness? How do we use all the information at our disposal to make the best decisions about what to do next? And all of this has brought great new options for how to reach consumers and reach them successfully. But it has, I guess, kind of turned the advertising machine on its head. There's a life cycle for each of these videos, from concept to creation to distribution and maybe even long-term content library. And all of that has had to be reimagined with new processes, a much more nimble mindset, and especially new technologies to support it all. That model of agencies and brands collaborating to create and deliver the right videos to the right channels in the right formats at the right time is so much more of an adventure than it used to be. Although I think we like to think of an exciting adventure. And that's what we're here to explore today. All of those dimensions of effective video asset life cycles, video asset management. And we have a great lineup of speakers to help us with that exploration, covering the technologies, the processes, and sharing all of their learnings for what they have seen be successful. By the way, depending on when you looked at the website and signed up for this event, you may have been expecting to see Teresa Regley helm the show. She had some personal matters that obliged her to be elsewhere today, but the program you see here is very much her vision, and we thank her for curating it all so nicely. Before we get going, a couple of housekeeping notes. During the sessions, you can chat with your fellow delegates and of course, submit questions to the current speaker using the box on the right-hand side of the screen. Please ask questions. Make the most of this amazing brain trust here today. We'll do our best to get to as many questions as we can. There's a community tab where you can post questions and polls for your fellow attendees. And then there's a networking lounge. You can click there throughout the event for real-time networking with fellow attendees. And then if you find you need any help, tech support or assistance from the Henry Stewart team, then there's a chat bot, which is that funky little bubble on the bottom right of the screen. Though we promise it's more than a bot, and you'll get connected to some very helpful real people there. Well, there's our housekeeping for the day. Now on with the show. And to start that show, we're going to start at where the content itself was born, the content life cycle, the creative processes that bring our lovely videos into the world. Jeremy Carson is a creative director at Saatchi Saatchi, with himself a storied career at the heart of storytelling itself. Who better to kick off our adventure today? So Jeremy, over to you.
Hello. Hi, Graham. Just doing a quick sound check. Everyone can hear me okay? Awesome. All right. So, like I said, or like Graham said, my name's Jeremy Carson. I'm a creative director at Saatchi Saatchi. A little about me, actually. I had a baby about a year ago. A COVID baby, as they say, right? He's sleeping through the night now. So my wife and I, we have a couple hours every night to ourselves. So of course, we spend it doing what any husband and wife would do when you have a couple hours to yourself. We sit on the couch, we binge on TV. We'll turn on Netflix, start watching, and okay, so I'm the kind of guy that after the first 10 minutes of watching something, I'll point to the screen and I'll say, oh, that guy. I bet he's Gossip Girl. And my wife just stares at me, probably thinking of shoving our baby's pacifier in my mouth. Also thinking, well, if you know the end, why watch? Well, the thing is, it doesn't really matter to me. Look, I watched all the Avengers movies knowing the good guys were going to win. I knew Superman was going to save the world yet again. And of course, Ross and Rachel are going to end up together. I know the end. I want to know how they do it. How do they get there? To me, the ending isn't what's really important. The journey is, the story. Now, like I said, jeremycarson.com, Jeremy Carson app, that's my handle, everything. I'm a creative director. But what I'm really excited here to talk to you all about is video and what that story is, because video inherently is the ultimate embodiment of a story, right? It has this special ability to immerse people in a way that images, music, voice, words, they just can't do on their own, because what video does is it brings them all together in this intricate dance that you really just want to join in on, right? And you all see that dance. You see it at the end. You see perfect choreography, slick moves, beautiful dancers. You get the finished product, the video, right? You're like me when I watch a show. You know the end of the story. So what I'm here to do is I'm here to bring you on that journey, the thousands of decisions and potential mistakes that it goes through before it ends up on your desktop. Because the journey of an idea, the journey of an idea to a story, to an ad, it's as vital as the ending is. So, at the risk of sounding a little elaborate, it's time to show you all how we save the world. But since you all know the ending, of course, you get the video, let's start there and work our way backwards. So in the end, you've got a video. You've got this digital file. It's named in a very specific way. Shout out to all those who create naming conventions. You're the real heroes. And that file, it has all this metadata. It has length, format, camera type, lens, color, profile, all those different types of things. It's kind of like a digital tattoo tracking its journey. Speaking of tattoos, actually, I read about this artist in England, Jo Harrison. She spent most of her career giving people tattoos to cover up their scars. And she sees these imperfections, these marks of individuals' own stories, and creates art with them. A video, it actually goes through that same thing. It's in this process called post-production, or post for short. It's the final leg of its journey. Essentially, it's how you get something like this from something like that, right? Or how you get this from that. All the rough elements, hours of footage, a myriad of sound effects, music meticulously timed and mixed, elaborate animations, magical visual effects, they're all brought together into a rough cut. And when I say rough, it's rough. Usually creatives leave the first session not only worrying if this was a good idea, but doubting every single decision we've ever made in our lives. I mean, eventually, after 5 or 6 more rounds of questioning your purpose in the world, you end up with this thing. This result of weeks, if not months, of work composed into a dirty 30 seconds or so. And you start what's called cleanup, where you literally have to go through every single frame of the video, finding any imperfections and creating art out of it. even if that means adding pants to a bottomless man that wandered through the background of the only usable shot of the product that day that you got. Yes, that actually happened to me. The post phase, it takes all those imperfect pieces and it smooths out all the wrinkles. But sometimes, you have to fix it in post, which is what that Avengers scene shows. It's magical. It's magical what happens during that time. But it's why producers hate that term, fix it in post, because magic is really expensive. When things go wrong on a shoot, fixing it in post can possibly be the only option. Murphy's Law is in full effect on a shoot. What can go wrong will go wrong. Let me tell you a story. So this right here, this is one of my first agency projects. I was this bright-eyed, bushy-eyebrowed creative arriving on set super early, super proud of this video that we were about to make. Basically, the idea was these pseudo Sesame Street characters that we made up. They brought you through this world of technology. It was cute, really cute. I mean, at least I thought so. The CEO of the company, not so much. Yeah, see, his employees, they didn't show him the script until the morning of the shoot. Yeah. Now, in his defense, he really only had one comment before we started. It was just one comment. I hate the puppets. Now, imagine trying to make Sesame Street without the puppets. Yeah, the entire shoot day was scrapped. We had 12 hours to rewrite the concept. We ended up booking the hand model from all those iPhone commercials. You can see it right about here. That's him. Yeah. We had to pay this emergency fee to book him. And the client, they paid for a whole new day of shooting. Something in the, I want to say like $500,000 range of mistakes, and they didn't even blink an eye. Yeah. Now, on the other hand, the next year at another agency, we had less than half of that budget for the entire year to make 20 different videos. And it was some of the best work that I've ever done. Because when we realized we needed 2 cameras, but only had 1 cameraman, guess who learned how to operate one? And when we couldn't afford an animator for a really cool title sequence, we quickly made a wooden sign to drop from the ceiling, like you see right there. And my point is that cool $500,000 from the other agency, yeah, it probably would have been helpful. But there's this funny thing about creativity. It's kind of like water. It'll fill the shape of whatever container it's put in. Ideas, they can live on big budgets, they can live on small budgets, they just look different. But that's what makes a shoot fun. I mean, sure, people like going to cool locations. They like working with 100 different people, each specializing in a different job. I mean, there's literally a person who does the microphone. There's a person who does the lighting. There's a person who controls the camera. There's a person who moves the camera. And then there's a person that focuses the camera. Really, the biggest part of a shoot that people love is gaining 10 pounds from overeating at craft services. That's kind of the best part about it. You got to wear loose pants. Honestly, the really fun part is the problem solving. We hope there aren't any problems. I mean, we plan for there to be, we hope there won't be. And all that planning, it takes place during a phase called pre-production or pre-pro. Remember that expression that I said earlier, fix it in post? Well, I was raised with the whole measure twice, cut once mentality. Get it? 2 rulers, measure twice, cut once. So I like to say, fix it in pre-pro. Get as much right as you can before you even pick up that camera. And the same director that I worked with on that first project, the one with the puppets, what he told me was after doing this, making videos, films, commercials for so long, it kind of ruined his ability to just sit back and watch a movie. He'd be thinking of all the decisions, the prep, the thinking that went into that image that was in front of him. So the thing is now I find myself doing the same thing. Movies, this mysterious magic that they have, it's just kind of ruined for me. So because I'm generous, I'm going to ruin it for you too. Game of Thrones, right here. One of the greatest 7 seasons of an 8-season show of all time. Now, to pull something off like that, you have to plan everything out. Like, okay, for example, did you know that they shot that show in over 30 different actual castles all over the world. Now, someone had to find and approve every location, selected from 100 more, I'm sure. That's someone's job. Now, they probably went through thousands of actors to find that killer cast, especially Peter Dinklage. He was just amazing. I love him. Now, side note, actually, nothing makes me feel more superficial than casting calls. Having to go through thousands of actors and actresses based on how they look, they sound, they move, they smell. I mean, you're going to be on set with them for 14 hours, so smell is kind of important. And then you dress them up. So look at these scenes, right? They have to have perfect clothes, perfect wardrobe. It needs to not only fit each actor, but it has to coordinate with the other actors. Plus, it has to fit the scene itself. And then every choreographed movement that they do, every camera angle, every single shot, it's outlined in what's called a storyboard. It's the blueprint. And it's usually the first time that everyone starts to see that story that we're trying to tell. So when you put the scene together and let's just say a Starbucks cup gets left in the scene, someone is definitely getting fired. Now, whether it's over 8 seasons or it's really just over 30 seconds, whether it's for entertainment or to advertise, all those same decisions happen. Everything that happened on Game of Thrones, it happens on every production that I'm on. Locations, casting, wardrobe, storyboards, everything. But good directors, what they do is they make it come together into one cohesive story and they make it look effortless. Yeah, I mean, the thing is as a creative director, a lot of people think that I'm the one telling this story. But in the end, it's not me. We have to find a director. They're the ones that bring the 90% perspiration to our 10% of inspiration. And every director tells stories in their own way. So first, I worked on a project a few years ago, and it went 13 rounds with the client. We didn't write a script. No. What we wrote could not be called anything other than a friggin' manual. Every single moment of that video was articulated in painstaking detail on paper. It was this precarious balance of words and visuals specifically assembled to make our client, let's just say, comfortable. All the work, it was put in up front to the point where we really just needed to simply hand over this script, the sketches, the reference images to a director. So we knew we were looking for someone skilled in creative craftsmanship, someone that can take someone's story and tell it beautifully. But on the other hand, I've sold through ideas that were completely amorphous, almost absurdly unspecific, other than this great thought. It was this concept around what we called an idea engine, powered by a car that could come up with activities that no human ever thought of before. Let me say that one more time. A car that could come up with activities that no human ever thought of before. We had no idea how to do that or how to visualize it, how to bring it to life at all. So what we did is we tapped a director with a creative opinion on how to do that. We went to them to solve the problem, not in our way, but in theirs. Now, these are the people that have made a name for themselves. They've developed this style that's all on their own. Think about it. You know what a Wes Anderson film is going to be, right? Because it's Wes Anderson. Now, if you're looking for a Michael Bay type, you're going to leave Wes off that list. But whomever you work with, you're expecting them to have a point of view, a vision that you couldn't come up with on your own. So they tell their story in their own way. And that story starts with a script, right? Yeah, everyone knows that. You need a script to make a video, to tell a story. So in the past few years, I've been kind of vocal on social media. And because of that, I've had a lot of people coming to me and messaging me on LinkedIn, Instagram, all those different places. They want to know if they have what it takes to become a creative. Now, this one guy, he was based in Dubai. He sent me a script and he said, hey, I want to be a copywriter. How would I sell this script to a perfume company like Dior or Yves Saint Laurent or Dolce & Gabbana? And so I read the script. And after reading it, I realized that he made one of the most basic mistakes that all creatives make at some point. He had a script, but he didn't have an idea. The creatives know that you shouldn't start with a script. I mean, we do sometimes. I mean, we do, it's on accident, but we really shouldn't. No, what you need to do is you need to start with an idea. For example, an idea like the journey is as vital to a story as its ending. An idea that creative will sweat over, we lose sleep over, we dedicate our lives to coming up with these things because for some reason, coming up with ideas, it scratches this itch that we have. Hal Riney, he was this legendary ad man back in the day. He said in this documentary, Art and Copy, which I recommend everybody watch, Art and Copy, the frightening and most difficult thing about being what somebody calls a creative person is that you have absolutely no idea where any of your thoughts come from. And you don't have any idea where they're going to come from tomorrow. So finding that idea is, I mean, really to a creative, it's a relief. But turning that idea into a story, that requires you do one thing: make people care. Spreading awareness about a brand, make me care about it. Trying to sell a product, why should I care? Making a demo explainer video on how to assemble a Swedish armoire using wooden pegs and an Allen wrench that you get in that little bag that's impossible to get out of, make me care enough to watch that. Because when we care, we become part of the story. We pay attention, which is really the whole point of my job, honestly, get people to pay attention. I do a whole talk about how relevance makes people care about ads and makes them pay attention. I think it's on the Henry Stewart YouTube channel. Check it out, shameless plug. It's a very specific skill set, storytelling. I mean, stories, especially advertising stories, they obviously go through this long journey to get made that we just talked about from end to beginning. But before that, they've got a lot of jobs to do. It isn't just about communicating the idea. It's saying what the client wants to say and what the audience needs to hear, which rarely are the same thing. And all the while, what we have to do as creatives is make something that just satisfies our creative soul so we can be proud of what it is that we put all this time into. Along the way, there are a lot of twists and turns, obviously. I mean, figuring out the balance between humanity and the brand, the client and the audience, or as I like to call it, the heart and the head. It's not a linear process. It's not a straight line. Actually, if anybody has ever seen that show, The Good Place, which again, amazing one, you should binge it. The creative process of turning an idea into a story, it's well, they describe time after, in the afterlife as not a straight line. They say it's more squiggly. It is, well, this is what they say it is. Jeremy Bearimy. It's this squiggly line that goes backwards and forwards. You pivot, you tangent. Sometimes you revisit what you've done before. You throw that away. You explore something new. And in the end, you usually end up somewhere completely different than where you originally thought that you would. Because the truth is, we come up with stories through trial and error. That's it. You pull from personal experience, situations that you've been in or heard someone talk about. That's really why watching shows and movies, going to museums, listening to podcasts, reading, just living life, it's all part of what a creative actually needs to do in order to have that bucket of relatable human stories to pull from. Now, I'd like to give you a formula, but really everybody's process is different. What we do, honestly, is just program our brains to see this brand benefit. And somehow we connect it to one of those experiences that's just hidden in the corner of our mind. How that works, it's kind of the mystery of creativity, right? But then we get into the craft, which is much more teachable. And it's about weaving those two things together into this thing that has this beginning, a middle, and an end. And it creates tension. It's a problem that hopefully the brand is the solution to. Then what you do is you write a few dozen scripts. Your creative director kills most of them. You write a few dozen more, they kill more. You pick some up off the floor that have been crumpled into a little ball. And then once you have a handful of them that you really like, you check it against the list. What do we need to say? What does the client want? And honestly, would anyone care? Then, after you've crossed your fingers, hoping that the client has picked a story, you start your journey. You find a director. You relentlessly plan every detail during pre-pro. You wing it when something goes wrong during the shoot, and you iron out all those imperfections in post until finally it ends up on the desktop of one of you. The ending of the story for a story meant to simply make people care. And that, everybody, that's how we saved the world. Thank you.
Hey, Jeremy, there's so much to sort of take in and process and all the advice you gave there. I'm wondering how much, as you embark on a creative journey with content, how much are you thinking about how or where the content itself will be seen? You know, TV versus online, you know, how much is that all the way back up at the idea stage and the script stage versus it done downstream?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So, so in my other talk, I actually talk about how we have to not only consider what it is that we want to say, why it is that we're saying it, and how it is that we say, but we have to consider who it is we're talking to, because everybody consumes content in different ways. It's called consumption behavior. And if I'm going to make a video, just going to say video because that's what this is, video asset management. If I'm going to make a video that's for someone that's watching television or large screen format in what's called a forced view environment, they have no other choice than to watch this thing. So the way that I tell a story can fit like an arc that builds up to something, because I want to build their suspense until finally, there's that climax, and then it ends. Now, if I'm building that for something that's on a social platform, right? Like let's just say Instagram, where you're scrolling and there's no reason for that person to have to watch that video. You want to change that story arc. You want to tell the hook up front so that you catch them and you keep them, and then you kind of maintain that interest the entire way. So the way that people consume content definitely needs to alter the way that we tell the stories. The ideas can all be the same. Coming up with ideas, it's always the same thing, but the way to craft that idea into a story that's specifically tailored for a platform and for the individual that's going to watch it on that platform, those have to be very specific. The people that are not doing that are finding out that it's not effective. It's not actually, showing the ROI on the ad. But when they are doing it, it's called contextual content or contextual creative.
How much are you thinking about that moment when people will skip an ad? You talked about the hook up front. You know, how much are you planning or thinking or getting into the psychology of, how quickly somebody will click the skip button?
All the time, because it's basically the thing that's coming after us, right? If someone skips the ad, then all of that work that I did is just completely out the window. And so if when we're coming up with that idea, if we don't keep that in consideration, essentially like I'm making this for myself. What's the point of even making, right? Like we're doing stuff because we want other people to see it, but that's kind of the point, right? We want people to see ads. And so the psychology element of it, the math into, figuring out, okay, the data says that people watch the first 6 seconds of a video more than the last 24 seconds if it's a 30-second spot or something like that. All of that kind of goes into it. But then after doing it for a few times, a few different campaigns, it starts to become second nature, and you don't really have to think about it anymore. It's more like, oh yeah, I know there's no hook in the beginning of the story. We really need to restructure this and da-da-da-da. And as we start to go through different story frameworks, you just kind of have an ability to start seeing what works and what doesn't. And that's pretty much what my job is. I'm not really sitting down and writing these stories anymore as a creative director. I help guide my team to write the stories. And my job is to be able to look at them and see, okay, is this a story structure that will hook someone? Is this something that will fit within a 6-second format, a 15-second format, a 30-second format? And being able to evaluate them and critique them on that early on in the process is, it's tough because I have to be the bad guy a lot of the time, but hopefully it leads to better creative in the end.
Well, actually, you make me think of another question there with your answer. How feasible is it to have an idea and then produce that idea in different lengths, like, a 10-second, a 15-second, a 30-second version of the same idea?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time people in the creative industry, they think, oh, well, I have to make a 6-second video and a 15-second video and a 30-second video. And what if I want to make a 16 or 60-second video to run in very specific placements? And they look at that as you have to make 4 different types of videos. And really it's not. I mean, that's how I started. My team, we all started that same way, said, okay, we have to concept 6 seconds and we have to concept 15 seconds and 30s differently. Then we started breaking it out and we said, well, no, there's longer form and there's shorter form. And essentially what a lot of creatives do is when they write a 60-second video, they create a 30-second cut down, or 60 seconds don't really run anywhere more than Super Bowl anymore. So let's just say they make a 30-second video and they cut it down to 15. So like an abridged version of that story. Well, what my team does on short form content is we write a 6-second video. We figure out a story that's able to fit in this super, super tight time frame. And then for the 15-second version of that, we expand on it. And a lot of that is in that pre-pro phase. It's understanding, well, what's that point that you're trying to make? Is it able to be consumed in just a matter of seconds? And then if you have a little bit more breathing room, can you shoot more things? Can you go into the edit bay and actually expand on that rough cut to tell more of that story? So again, it's been this trial and error process. I mean, we didn't get it right in the first, let's just say 3 campaigns. We had to experiment and try different things. And then as we tried those different things and found what was successful, not only from a measurement standpoint, but what felt good. I mean, that's a very big aspect of creativity. It's kind of this gut reaction of, does it feel right? Did it get me interested? Did I actually care about it? Once we got to that point, we're like, okay, we start to understand how it is that we need to tell these stories. So it's feasible, but everybody kind of does it in their own way. And in my opinion, saying, hey, I'm going to shoot a 60-second video and I'm going to cut it all the way down to 6 seconds never works. We've tried it. It just was horrible because you get this long, elaborate story. And then for the very short 6 seconds, you kind of get and then you're done.
Well, 6 seconds seems almost ridiculously short. I know it's related to our human attention span, and it's the reality that we live with now. But it's not, giving away too much of your secret sauce. How do you tell a story in just 6 seconds?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. We actually have these terms that we've been making up for them, where a story that has a traditional story arc of something happens and then it reaches a climax and it drops, or you even flip it where there's a hook and then you kind of maintain that. We just call it stories, right? When it comes to a 6-second video, we actually think of it more like a print ad, right? We call them moments because you're not trying to tell a long, elaborate story. You're trying to show a moment in time with a little bit of wiggle room on the ends. And then that moment in time, as you expand on, well, what happened right before that moment, what happens right after that moment that could be interesting, that's how we expand those 6-second videos into longer formats. So it's really just about looking at them as completely different ways of storytelling, but the time length, the actual, like the format of the video, that shouldn't necessarily be something that dictates it. It's more about the way, the type of story that you're trying to tell. Is it a moment or is it this more elaborate story arc?
Interesting question come in from the audience about rights. At what point in the process are you thinking about rights, gathering rights, and how much does rights influence your choices and your process?
Depends what kind of creative you are. There's the blue sky creatives where they're like, I'm going to come up with whatever I want, and producers, it's your job to figure out how to make it happen. Or you can be, which is what I am, a little bit more integrated with your producer, where as you have ideas early on, you start to talk to them about what they know, because I mean, they've been doing this for a long time. So it's their job to understand what are the big red flags. Okay, you can't use this Beatles song because that's going to cost us $1 million. So maybe we use something that's from a stock house or something in that world. Or you can't put Brad Pitt in this because, there's no way we can afford him. But how about XYZ celebrity? So it's kind of like either you come up with an idea that is so flexible that you can kind of put anybody in there, you can worry about music, the rights and all that kind of stuff after you've already come up with it, or you kind of think about the specifics early on. And just depending on how tight of a budget and how tight of a shoot that you have, it can kind of change which way you go about it.
Okay. How are you factoring in information or data that's coming back from users and from the consumer platforms now that that's available to us? How much does that influence the creative process or not?
Me specifically, a lot. The department of creative that I work in is called Data-Driven Creative. And a lot of people hear that and they think, oh, so you get the numbers and it says make the car red, and so you're going to make it red and that's it. And it's like, no, what it really is looking at how do people behave in the way that they've consumed the content, and then we kind of use that as guardrails on how to create that story. Again, like, hey, people pay attention to the first 5 seconds of a video. Okay, cool. If you have something interesting that you want to say, put it in that first 5 seconds to hook them, and that way they'll stick around for the rest of the thing. I am always in our analytics meetings to understand how the mid-campaign report is coming out. What we do on a media side is we optimize the campaign. Usually we create more than, I would say, 5 or 6 videos. So it's like, a couple of them are not doing so great. You pull those back, you optimize the campaign by running a few more of them a little heavier in the media flight. And then from a creative standpoint, luckily I work with Toyota and we've had them for almost a half a century now. And we have the ability to look back at several campaigns that we've done. And honestly, even I just look back at the past 2 years because things change so quickly. How did those campaigns do? What was the difference in the creative between those campaigns? And what kind of insights can I glean from that in order to help tailor the next campaign in a way that takes the successes of all of those and brings them forward in this one? The ideas always are being developed, but again, it comes down to what's the craft of it. Is the data, the analytics that's coming in telling us that the way this story was told was better than this one? And then we get really crazy sometimes, and we do this psychological or psychographic testing, neuro testing, where you kind of like can gauge, do people sweat more during a certain scene? Did their hair stand up? Did their eyes dilate during all these different parts? And we can kind of figure out like what actually is engaging for people. That's where it gets a little crazy, but it definitely helps because it gets into the little soft data.
Right. Well, I mean, it is all information, right? It's, the extent to which we can actually make something of it is perhaps part of the adventure ahead. Here's another really good question come in from the room about collaboration. What are the most effective ways to collaborate between sort of the creative and non-creative worlds? There's a right-brained world and there's a left-brained world, and they don't necessarily always find each other on the same wavelength. How have you found the best techniques to navigate that collaboration?
Some people like doing it, some people don't. And I think that it's difficult to force the collaboration. And what you should do is find the people who are willing to understand the value of both sides and have those people fill those roles and become kind of leaders in the creative. That again was kind of like one of the lucky parts about me. I'm one of those weird art guys that loved math. And so I was able to, I learned programming, and I was able to then therefore learn how to work, some Excel spreadsheet analytics and kind of understand those sides of it and be able to decipher a lot of what the left brain people were doing and integrate that into the right brain side. So I'd say the biggest thing is neither side has the whole picture, and both sides have to understand that. It's not just about the numbers. It's not just about the art. I said it before in my talk, it's about the heart and the head. And it's about understanding that those two things need to work together in order to create something better than they could create on their own. Creatives are probably a little bit more stubborn because, they love the limelight and they love being able to say, I could do it by my gut. There's a magic to it that no one can measure and all that kind of stuff. But being able to understand both sides of the creative results and the creative development and bringing them together in that collaborative form, it requires a certain type of person. And I'd say don't force everyone to have to try to do it. It's just going to be a lot of wasted effort. Find the people that are really good at it and have those kind of be the bridge between those different groups.
I think that's brilliant advice, a brilliant observation. And actually that's us out of time on this session. Jeremy, thank you so much. What a great story. And just, you're fantastic at telling that story too. Thank you for sharing your world with us.